Hello and welcome to NBI Perspectives. Today we're going to be talking with a special guest on sustainable fixed income. I'd like to welcome Simon Sénécal from AlphaFixe. Just to remind you, we have three products, three ETFs in the segment. Canadian bonds, corporate bonds, and short-term bonds, all managed by AlphaFixe. Having Simon with us today, I think we'll learn a little bit more about this important segment in the market. So welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Terry.
Can you talk to us a little more about, the type of securities that you're looking at when you build a portfolio managing our ETFs in the sustainable market?
Yes, Terry, there's a few types of different sustainable bonds out there, and we tend to focus on the use of proceeds type of bond, the ones that the issuer take 100% of the proceeds to finance environmental or social projects. So what we like about these bonds is that the issuer will provide reporting at the project level, which offers a lot more granularity compared to the other types of sustainable bonds out there, namely the sustainability-linked bonds. Those bonds will have a KPI on which the issuer will focus on and will report on, but that's at the corporate level, which is more of a high level than the level of granularity that we have when we fund sustainable use of proceeds bond. The type of labels that you find in use of proceeds bonds are green bonds, social bonds, and sustainability bonds. And the sustainability bonds allow issuers to finance environmental as well as social projects.
And this is, relatively new market. Can you talk to us about how it's evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, so the first green bond was issued in 2007. So since then, the market evolved exponentially at some times. Just to give you an idea, here in Canada, in Canadian dollars in 2020, issuances were at around 8 billion Canadian dollars. When you compare this to 2021, it doubled at 16 billion. And in 2022, we still had a bit of growth. It was a bit less, but still we had $18 billion of issuances. So that shows that having a growing base of issuers allows these issuers that come back to the market every year to populate the market, and for us investors to have a lot to invest in. If you compare that to sustainability and social bonds, they're a much smaller market, but still sustainability bonds have the advantage, as I mentioned earlier, to finance environmental and social projects at the same time. And this is actually the type of bond that the National Bank of Canada chose for their sustainability bond program. And if you look at their reporting in 2022, they used the proceeds majoritarily for renewable energy at 50% of the total proceeds. Then there was maybe 20% that went towards affordable housing, and the last 30% went towards accessibility to essential services. So Terry, these are all like really good projects and that are exciting to finance.
And maybe just to go a little further, could you give us an example of an issuer that will help people understand exactly the type of projects that we're financing with these bonds?
Yeah, a good example I like to give is the federal government of Canada that came to the market with their first green bond in 2022. We're excited as investors. We're excited about that because we're doing active management here. So this increases the liquidity of the green bond market, and increased liquidity means more flexibility on the management front. So we're fairly happy about that. And this will pave the way also for other issuers and other sectors like provinces, municipalities, and the corporate sector as well to follow best practices and to have like a sane and evolving market.
Now, one thing we hear about on a regular basis in ESG and sustainability is greenwashing. So is this an issue in fixed income? How do you manage it? How do you make sure that you can avoid risks and pitfalls?
Yeah, so greenwashing is a risk. We want, as portfolio managers, to avoid these type of risks in the portfolio. To do so, what we do is that we just follow best practices. When it comes to the fixed income market and more precisely use of proceeds bonds, there are taxonomies out there to help us define the greenness of the bonds. The most well-known and most robust taxonomy is the Climate Bonds Initiative's taxonomy. It's simply a list of eligible green projects. There's an example of greenwashing here in Canada when an issuer came to the market with a green label, but that financed like projects, low carbon projects in activities that involve natural gas. So this would have been a good opportunity to use a transition label. There's no transition taxonomy for the moment, but there's groups in Canada working on a list of eligible transition projects that will allow issuers in carbon-intensive industries to finance their low-carbon initiatives and then avoid greenwashing by segmenting green and transition projects.
Now, some people, to have an impact, decide to exclude certain sectors, and where you can think about the high polluters, et cetera. Is that something we have to think about in fixed income, sustainable fixed income? How do you manage that? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so the beauty of the use of proceeds market is that you can finance the low carbon initiatives and social causes through the underlying projects that are financed by the labeled bonds. That being said, when you invest in a labeled green bond, you're facing the credit risk of the issuer and not the underlying projects. That means that you will have the same expected return from that issuer. And then, Terry, at the portfolio level, that means you have a diversified base of issuers giving you the same risk profile and return profile as a regular traditional active mandate. So then you can beat your benchmark and have the same sources of value added. And there you go. It's the beauty of that market, and we're fairly happy that it's growing still.
Good. Well, I hope you've learned something new on sustainable fixed income. I know I have. I'd like to thank Simon from AlphaFixe, who's an important partner in our open architecture, and I'd like to thank you and wish you a good day. Thank you.
Thanks.